Hello, Stampers! Welcome back to RegalStamping.com for episode 6 of I Miss Your Face, an online card class. My name is Krista Thomas, and I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today we're going to be doing a card with the Bloom and Grow bundle. And it includes the Bloom and Grow stamp set, as well as the dies that are called Budding Blooms, and I have a bunch of them missing out of here because I'll be using them in this video. And so we're using some really bright colors, and we'll also need an embossing folder, which I've chosen to use the Coastal Weave 3D embossing folder, and a background stamp on the yellow piece here. I'm using handwritten, but any background stamp would work. You could even just use an embossing folder on this. And then the green, Granny Apple Green circle right here is cut out with a circle from Stitched Shapes Framelits, and it is the largest circle in this set. Finally, the swirls that I've cut out of silver foil are from the, what is it called? Christmas Cardinal dies. Here, they're part of this bundle or set. I guess it's not a bundle anymore, but it is still available, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so to make this card, I'm going to show you everything, all the pieces that you'll need, in addition to the ones I just showed, and a Daffodil Delight ink pad, as well as a Tuxedo Black ink pad. So let me move some of this out of the way. The pieces that you're going to need for this card is the card base, which is Granny Apple Green, and it measures 5.5 by 8.5, and we'll be folding that in half. And then for the front, you're going to need a piece of Whisper White that measures 5 1/4 by 4 inches, and you'll also need one of that size for the inside. So you're going to have 2 pieces of that size. Next, you'll need 3 pieces of Melon Mambo. And these little strips measure 3.5 inches long by 3/4 of an inch wide. So 3 of those. You'll need a yellow piece, Daffodil Delight, that measures 4 inches by 2 3/4. And this is one that you could either use a background stamp or use an embossing folder on, just for here. The Granny Apple Green stitched circle that we'll be using, and then a Whisper White piece that we'll be stamping our flowers on, and I will be coloring those with Stampin' Blend markers. The marker colors that I'll be using are Granny Apple Green, light and dark, Lovely Lipstick, light and dark, Highland Heather, light and dark, and Flirty Flamingo, light and dark. So let's go ahead and get started. And I like to just start with my card base and work my way up. So I'm going to fold this card base in half and use a bone folder to get myself a nice crease. And then for the next piece, I will be using one of the Whisper White mats, and I need to run this through that embossing folder that I showed you before. So Coastal Weave embossing folder, and let me get my big shot up here. So I'm going to place the white paper into this embossing folder, and if you don't have this embossing folder, look and see what else you could use. And now we have this beautifully embossed white paper. So let me move this out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and glue this down now to my card base. right, so I'm going to get this centered on here. And then the next pieces that I will need are the 3 Melon Mambo strips and the yellow piece. Now, I kind of found that in order to get the Melon Mambo pieces centered, and I'm going to show you that if you measure, it's not perfect, but the easiest way to get those pieces centered, I found, was to stamp the yellow piece and then add the green circle. It's easier to get that centered, and then you can see the center better and work your way out. So that's my process, and if you have a better way, do it that way. But I had trouble with one of my samples. They ended up way off, so I don't want that to happen to you. So the next thing I'm going to do then is to stamp the background so that we can start working our way up and back. So this is the handwritten background stamp, and I'm going to ink it up. And I don't really need to ink the whole thing because this piece of paper is going to fit up here in this top half. So I'm just inking that. And the best way that I have found to get a good inking with these big background stamps is, rather than turning it over and stamping and giving it pressure everywhere, keep it laying rubber side up and then lay your paper onto it, keeping it straight because in this case that matters, and then lay a piece of paper over the top so that you don't get ink all over your fingers, and give it a nice massage. Okay, and then when you lift it off, you're going to have a perfect impression every single time. Normally I would just pull this placemat up and over, but if you have a scrap piece of paper like I had handy, you can just bring that in as well. So I'll put that aside, and then the next part that I want is my green circle, and if I get this put on here centered, it's going to make it easier to figure out placement for those Melon Mambo strips. But if you'll notice in my sample, I do have the word hello stamped down here, and before I glue it to anything, especially since this is popped up with dimensionals, I want to get that sentiment stamped on there, because once it's raised up, I'm not going to have a solid base to stamp on. So the hello just needs to be down at the bottom, fairly close. And this hello is from the Bloom and Grow stamp set, same as where the flowers are going to be from. Okay, so now this is ready to put on here, and I am going to pop it up with some Stampin' Dimensionals, and I will be putting some swishes in under it later. So I think I'm just going to go with 3 of the dimensionals. That way I can put those silver swishes in under later. I've got one of these sticking to me. So it'll be like this. I'm going to go ahead and take those backings off. And get that centered and get the hello straight, and that looks good. Okay, so now it's time to bring these strips in, and I just want to position those so that they're even at the top and the bottom. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right in the center and then lay this down. That center one is the important one. Just like that. And then the other two will be easy enough to piece in. And again, I am just going to put a little bit of glue in the center and lay this down over it and give it a good press. And then one more right here. And hopefully we'll be all nicely centered. Just trying to keep the gap in between these strips even and straight. And I think we did it. Okay, so that was how I found was easiest to get all of that on there. So now this is ready to glue onto the card base, just like this. And then as you can see from the finished sample, we'll be putting these swirly pieces in under and then the floral over the top, and that's all it takes. So let's go ahead and add some glue to the back, and you want to make sure to get some on these strips as well. I'm just going to go like that. And then this just gets centered left to right and top to bottom, like that. Okay, now our card base is ready, but we need some flowers. And I'm going to be stamping the longest flower spray, which is this one, using black Memento ink. And I like to ink it up really good. And then give it some good pressure. There we go. And now it's time to do some coloring. Let me close that ink pad. Okay, so for the coloring, I am going to start with Flirty Flamingo Light. And I want to just fill in, and this first color can be very quick. I am not coloring the centers of the flowers where all that black stuff is. I'm going to leave that. I found on one of my samples that I made, I colored it in, and then I ended up taking the color lifter pen and removing most of the ink because I kind of liked the white showing through. So this first color, the light Flirty Flamingo, you can kind of just scribble in. So I am just coloring these in. Like that. And I think everything that's left is leaves and stuff. So, okay, now I'm going to use Flirty Flamingo Dark on the, not the middle and not the outside, so the two that are in from. And I'm just going to come in from the center a little bit. I don't want to cover up the light Flirty Flamingo that I've got there. Just a little bit of it. I want to leave some of it at the tips. Like that. Maybe a little there. All right, and those flowers are then done. Now, for the other flowers, I'm coming in with Lovely Lipstick Light. And this is a marker that is retiring. As I am videotaping this, it is on the retiring list. By the time this posts, I believe you'll have maybe one day to get on there and get them if they're still available. I am going to miss this color, but one of the new in colors is a hot pink color, and honestly I can't remember the name of it right now, but they are going to have markers in that color. So I think that that will help take the place of this if you don't have this one, or if you end up needing to replace it. I love these alcohol-based markers. They make coloring quick and easy, and you can shade to your heart's content. Okay, so those 3 now have the lovely lipstick light color in there, and I'm going to finish them up with a little bit of the lovely lipstick dark, and I'm not going to cover up quite as much, so I want to leave some of the previous colors. This is just going to darken the center of the flower a little bit, and where those petals go under, you want to give them a little bit of darker color too. And here. And the neat thing about these alcohol markers is you can go back over your coloring many times, and you can deepen colors. If you get it too dark, you can use a color lifter, and that will actually pull some of the color off. It doesn't always remove it entirely. I'm coming back in now with the light, and I think I want to eliminate just a little bit more of that lighter pink out at the tips. Kind of deepen these up just a little bit more. Makes it just a little darker. And then I'll come back in. And that was the light. So as it dries, you'll kind of see the definition there a little bit. I'm not sure that I really need to do any more on that. So for now, I'll leave that. Now, the little berries at the ends, I am going to color with Highland Heather. I'm going to start with the light one, and then I can just add a little drop of the dark to create a shadow. So get those colored in very quickly. See if I don't miss any. Just like that. And now for the Highland Heather dark, I'm just going to come in and do a little bit of a shadow at the bottom of each one. Just a few little dots or a little tiny swoosh. And that just adds a little shadowing. Okay, now finally we need the leaves colored, and I'm going to start with Granny Apple Green, the light one. I don't know if you've seen that as I'm coloring, these markers have two sizes. One is bigger, a brush, and the other end is a smaller. So depending on where you're coloring on something, you might need a smaller tip. If your image is large and you just want to get it filled in quicker, you can use the bigger end. Both cards in this episode 6 online class are going to use this same stamp set. So if you want more ideas for using this set, be sure and watch the other video as well. I probably need the smaller tip. Get a little carried away. So now I'm just going to flick in. Flicking is just what it sounds like. You flick away from your body. And as you get further away, the color gets like that. It's darker here, it gets lighter out there. So it's great for blending. Okay, I think I got all of them. So now the coloring is done on this, and we need to cut it out. So I'm going to bring the Big Shot in, and I will need I love my magnetic plate. It's very well used, you can see. And this. And then the die is right here. And we just get that centered where it needs to be. Okay, like this. Top plate on and just run it through. And I always bring it back through just because then it's right where I can grab it easily. Okay. And I use these little stickers like you'd use for garage sales. They're removable, but they work great, and it saves my washi tape for fun stuff. A lot of people use washi tape to tape it down, but I love those little stickers. They work well. Okay, so now these are ready to go on here, and I'm going to pop it up. So I just want to put maybe 3 pop dots on the back here. I'm not going to worry about putting them out here at the ends because those will be just fine hanging off the edge. You can see how the Stampin' Blend markers go through your cardstock. And so I always say to have a placemat down, especially if you're on a nice dining room table or surface. But as you can see, nothing ever comes off on my placemat. So, but I still would say be sure and have something under it just in case. Okay, so there's that. Now the final piece will be these little flourishes or swishes that will go in under, and that's why I didn't put pop dots all the way around the outside edge of this. I just had 3 beneath the circle, and that way I can slide things under very easily. I'm going to bring out my silicone pad and my Elmer's dotted tape runner. This is how I glue intricate things. The dots only stick to the paper. They might stick to your silicone mat, but when you pick it up, it you know, stays on the silicone. And I don't think I need them all the way out at the end, but then when I pick them up, the excess is on my silicone mat, which can be washed. It needs to be. And I've got sticky dots only where I want them. So I'm going to put that there. And then I'll do the other one. And when it's something this delicate, you do need to be careful that you don't rip it as you're doing it. Like that. Okay. And then like this. And I think that that will be perfect. There you go. Now for the inside of the card, I'm going to bring in my final white piece, and I'm going to use the same stamp that we used before for the flowers, and I'm going to come in with the end of it here and the end of it up here. And then coloring that is optional, so if you want to spend the time coloring, then by all means do. And if you're one of those that coloring maybe isn't your most favorite thing in the world, then don't. All right, so that creates a nice pretty addition for the inside. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to color these here. I would do it the same colors and everything that I did on the front of the card, and I'll show you the finished sample that I did. It's right here. I chose to not put a sentiment on the inside. This one is just hello. That way, when I need a card to send to someone, I can say what I want to say. I could always come in later and stamp a sentiment, but I often find that once I add a sentiment, then it's just not quite right for the situation. So I've been leaving more and more of my cards unstamped, sentiment-wise anyway, on the inside, and then adding that later. So thank you for joining me for this card, and I hope to see you in the next one. Let me grab the other card that we'll be making. So here's the next card that we'll be doing in the next video. It uses the same bundle, Bloom and Grow. However, I just said bundle, but when this goes live, I don't believe it's going to be a bundle anymore. So Bloom and Grow is the stamp set. Budding Blooms is the die set. And I hope you'll join me for that next video.